Today, we will speak about how to improve your CDP score. The internet issue has been resolved. We will take measures from our end to try to sort it out. I'll give 1 more minute for the attendance. Let's see if this sorts it out. I will give it 1 more minute and maybe the internet will work better. Thank you so much, everybody. Okay, once again, I have tried just to cut up the video to see if this sorts out the internet connectivity issue. In any case, I'm very happy to welcome everybody for this specific session. We are very happy to have you on board. I will kindly request 1 more minute to let us address the internet issue. If you still experience it, please just share it on the webinar chat. So let's start. This is a brief introduction about who we are. We are Nexio Projects. We are a climate consultancy, climate and ESG consultancy based in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands. And we are very happy to receive you today. I'm still seeing that the internet is not helping us. Hopefully we can do something about it. Let's give it a couple of minutes. If not, we will just change the Wi-Fi connection. So who are us? Like I mentioned, we are a climate and ESG consultancy team located in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, and we have been working for around 5 years in different sectors with different customers, around 200 projects now in 25 plus countries. We work with strategy development, climate change, ESG reporting, ratings, and certification. We, of course, also support our customers with other different services, particularly the climate team, which works in development of climate strategies. And of course, we also work in a very specific pillar, which is disclosure, which covers CDP, which is the main topic of today's webinar. A brief introduction from my end. My name is César Carreño. I am the lead of the climate team here at Nexio Projects. I have been working since 2010 in climate change, and previously I worked for 12 years in the agricultural sector in production of cacao, banana, coffee, and plantain. I had the opportunity of collaborating in the implementation of the CDP ICLE Unified Reporting System for cities, currently known as TRACK, the system for reporting for city sustainability and climate-related data disclosure. And now I'm supporting the private sector in their disclosure strategy for everything related to sustainability. Joining me today, we have Luis Felipe Reyes. He is the climate change analyst for Nexio Projects. And maybe Luis Felipe, a brief introduction from your end.
Yeah, good Well, everyone, my name is Luis Felipe Reyes. I'm part of the climate team here at Nextdoor Projects. I work mostly close with everything related with carbon accounting, LCA, and any other climate-related topic. I'm more than welcome you, or everyone, and I'm here to support you on this process.
Well, this is the brief agenda that we will be presenting. Remember, the idea of this webinar is to showcase potential solutions and introducing, of course, what is the concept of CDP, where you are on your CDP journey, if you wish to start disclosing, if you have already disclosed, if you have found barriers or constraints that does not allow you to move ahead in your CDP scoring, this webinar is for you. We will be touching bases for scoring methodology, for the CDP questions, how to improve your score, sharing one case study of one of our customers, and we will open a very brief Q&A session for you. But let's move to the first topic about CDP. What is it precisely? Previously known as the Carbon Disclosure Program, currently known as CDP. It's a global environmental impact association for non-profit purposes. They are a central repository for data for the private sector, but moreover, they have very recently transitioned to work with cities and some national governments as well. So the impact is widely known around the world. It has developed a framework to report on environmental and sustainability climate impacts. And of course, disclosure is suitable for companies, cities, states, and regions. So it covers a wide variety of sources of data to maintain this central repository to be used for different parties. This includes researchers, national governments, think tanks, so forth and so on. CDP in numbers. As you can see, there is a lot of increase according to the different pillars where CDP works for. We have the climate change theme, we have the water and forest as well. But climate change, the important part is that the importance of disclosure, the motivation for disclosure, as well as the different parties encouraging disclosure, it's increasingly growing and exponentially growing. As you can see, by 2022, 18,700 plus companies disclose data on CDP, but for cities, 1,100 plus disclosed in cities, states, and regions in 2022. Why is this important? Because a lot of the activities that take place from companies, it take place in cities. So it is a process that links the both of them, and this information can flow back and forth to support either national, subnational strategy, and moreover, helping the companies to comply with local and national regulations, which also impacts on their operation. Combined is around 130 trillions in assets on this specific front. And as you can see, water and forests are also slowly increasing their disclosure and reporting. All of this mobilized by a heavy supply chain engagement program. So how does it work? Well, investors request environmental data for different companies. This includes climate-related data, which is one of the key drivers and indicators for the development of the different strategies as well. But moreover, companies provide this data in order to find opportunities and to create opportunities for engagement with different organizations, investors, etc., and to analyze and to observe synergies. Moreover, they can use CDP as a monitoring tool for them to study how the process or how they evolve towards their climate goal. We have three different pillars. One of them is climate change, of course, everything related to climate change, carbon emissions, climate strategy, setting targets, how do you manage your climate data, what are the main drivers of your climate data, and what are your main blockers. In addition, we have forest, which is highly dedicated to companies that source their raw material or that use raw material that comes from forest. Everything related to forest could be soy or maybe pulp for paper. And how do they use this raw material in order to assess transparency, robustness of their frameworks, the drivers behind this process, and how they manage their supply chain to keep their value chain clean and moreover complying with different regulations at global and national level. And the last one is water security. Again, this has a lot of impact for different companies, particularly those which are working with fluids and with water-intensive processes. So these three different pillars, of course, request different information, but all of this is directly linked. Why? Because there are different challenges and risks that can be cross-cutting across all of these pillars. The main benefits of disclosure, of course, investors and stakeholder communication. This is key because a company that wishes to grow needs to show transparency, needs to be committed for different sustainability and environmental strategies and campaigns. It will allow your organization to manage your internal risk in a better way. Of course, to reduce the burden for reporting. If you wish to report to a national program, to a specific initiative program, you can use your central repository. Protect and improve your reputation. And of course, it will provide easy benchmarking with industry peers. This is key to see where you are, because you can identify not only your peers, but also your customers and your supply chain. No? It will improve resilience and transparency. I would like to highlight that, yes, the deck and the recording will be shared afterwards for those of you which have an internet connection that is make this webinar difficult. Don't worry, we will be sharing afterwards. Sorry to see you leave, but don't worry, you will have us on your inbox after the session finishes. So where does CDP fit? Well, there are different programs around the world. One of them is the CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And it's aligned, but moreover, it works very well with CDP disclosure platform, which as well works with the TCFD, the Task Force for Climate-Related and Financial Disclosure. It works with the US government as well. The US government is starting more and more to demand that different suppliers work with them by reporting on CDP, the International Standard and Sustainability Board. Science-based targets, which use CDP as the monitoring platform, and of course CDP independently as it is serves several initiatives in association with several organizations from the private sector and national government. So where does it fit? From recommendations to metrics, of course, it will help you to assess a year-on-year performance monitoring, innovation and sustainable strategies, methodologies and guidance. You can see how it moves from the TCFD recommendations to CDP questions, CDP guidance, and of course the CDP scoring. Moving forward, very quick poll. This is the first poll of the session. We will have 4. This is the chapter How to CDP Questionnaire. I will be launching the first poll. Is your organization going to take the 2023 CDP Questionnaire? Please let us know. I'm launching the poll. I will give you 1 minute to answer. Great, good participation. Closing the poll in the next 10 seconds. Okay, thank you very much. It is important for us to understand how this information is used, no? But our ideas for better assess what are your specific needs so we can prepare a further webinar for their needs. From here, we can see that a lot of the participants, around 63%, will be participating in the 2023 questionnaire. And there is, of course, other percentages which are either unsure or they will not participate. But let's move forward very quickly. Climate change. Of course, the first topic or the first thematic questionnaire includes climate-related risks and opportunities, greenhouse gas emissions, energy, and data. And Of course, climate-related targets. It is important to assess that these will demand for you to involve information on why do you develop your strategy towards your target, what are your main blockers, and why you are not doing or taking opportunity into this. Disclosure is very important. Not only yes or no, but whys and hows. For forests as well, of course, plans to remove deforestation from direct operations and supply chains. There are 3 unscored commodities, which are rubber, cocoa, and coffee, and of course, 4 foreign risk commodities. And finally, for water, the thematic questionnaire, water dependence and management, facility level water accounting, and assessment of water-related risks and opportunities. All of these 5 pillars that you see underneath are cross-cutting through the 3 different teams: climate change, forest, and water security. Risk and opportunities, business strategy, governance, targets and performance, and verification processes. It is essential that you need to create a sustainability plan that not only covers climate change, because this is one subcomponent of your sustainability strategy, but also other pillars like forest and water security. Here we have the second poll of the day. And it will be very important for us to have your participation on this specific front. I will launch it, and please just let us know if you can see it or not. Which of the 3 pillars should your organization disclose on? Remember, be transparent. We will be very happy to support you with a next iteration of this webinar. And webinar about climate change apparently is going to win. There is a lot of organizations working on climate change. And of course, this is driven by the demand of the investors. 10 more seconds. Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, 97% thinks that climate change is the main pillar to be addressed on this specific process. Moving forward, and I give the floor to Luis Felipe for this specific slide about the main changes from 2022 to 2023. Luis Felipe.
Well, thank you, Cesar. Well, in this case, we're going to analyze what are the differences between the questionnaire that we have from the previous year with the one that it was recently uploaded in the system. So the changes that we will see for this questionnaire for this year are basically focused on 3 sections, specifically the business strategy, the emission breakdown, and the biodiversity. For the first one, for the business strategy, we will see that they are asking information related to how you link your strategy, your climate-related strategy, through a specific impacts on how you could link to, for instance, taxonomy that is related with the sustainability EU taxonomy rule that is already linked with the new regulations here, at least in Europe. But this also applies to any other company that is related or linked with this specific taxonomy. The other one in emission breakdowns, it's mostly based on the amount of years that you can retrieve from the previous years. Basically, the previous questionnaires was based on only 3 years prior the submission of your answers, but now you will have at least 5 years that you can indeed report your emissions and how was the performance for those specific 5 years. The last part that added new questions is biodiversity, which is mostly related in how your activities are related in sensitive areas towards biodiversity. And the next slide, please. Around what are how you tackle the questionnaire. Basically, there are 2 options. If you are the first, if you just have the first time that you report according to the CDP, you can access to something called a minimal questionnaire. But it is important to notice that you're not going to be able to score that if either you have requested to support to disclose to the CDP from an investor, or if your annual revenue is lower than 250 million euros or dollars. So if you want to provide your score for CDP, you need to indeed go through the full version of the questionnaire. It is also important to consider that, of course, you can indeed still opt for submit this this minimal questionnaire, but you need to understand that sometimes you need to read the details about if you will receive a score for this, or better, it's a better option to go straight for the full questionnaire. As we just mentioned, there are seven questions, seven new questions in the questionnaire that are linked with the business strategy, with the mission breakdown, and with the biodiversity. But there are many other details that were changed throughout the questionnaire, but in a more specific way, related with some new breakdowns about like how you can include, for instance, for the emissions, the part of, and for the emissions and energy, the part that you can separate now your utilities from heat and water, for example, to self-produced services like electricity and so on. The other questions that were modified are related with carbon pricing, which is more in the way that you can now report anything that was anything related to cancel project-based carbon credits, as well as a description or more how you actually perform your internal pricing of the carbon throughout your company. What is the objective of the implementation of those carbon pricing? What is the pricing approach that you took to define that specific carbon price throughout your company? But basically, you will see that the questionnaire for the 2022 is quite similar to the 2023. So there are no several changes that you have to adopt for this new questionnaire. Now we are going to move to the section that is mostly related with how the methodology score works for CDP. And it's basically in a way that you will have specific thresholds to pass through. There are like different levels that goes from a disclosure to awareness, and then jump into the most elaborated and the most desired ones that are like management and leadership. And it's like a scoring like D, C, B, and A. You will receive a score of F if you don't disclose any information for the CDP. But then basically all these questions or everything that is related with the CDP questionnaire jumps in a way that depending on your answers, you will be able to indeed improve your score. You need at least 80% of the questions to be answered, fully answered, and scored to properly jump to another one. It means that maybe you can have a better approach in climate-related risk and opportunities, for example. But if you don't score enough in the other sections, like the emission breakdowns, measuring your scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, or even in setting your targets, you wouldn't be able to jump to the next level. So you need to be sure that all of your climate-related topics are addressed in a way that it's like all of them moving together. Otherwise, you will be blocked for some of your gaps that you didn't tackle before. This is like a way that usually the CDP presents the scoring. So it divides in a web, basically how you see the different chapters. And as we say, everything needs to be like combined and like in a way that everything moves together throughout a proper disclosure for all of the sections that you have to disclose. An important part about the revision criteria is how this how clean is actually the way that they provide the scoring for the companies. It is independent because it's not the CDP itself who provide the score, but there are partner organizations from the CDP who actually do the scoring process. It is comparable because no matter where the location and the companies are, it's the same methodology across the countries. It is transparent because reporting, it provides not only like a guidance, but also it provides a full explanation about how you can properly address the questions. And it's influential due to how public available the scores are. You can just go and check in the CDP website and you will see a specific scoring for the companies, and they are also shared directly with the investors. So now to understand how to improve your scoring to the CDP, it is basically important to understand the stage in which you are. So there is something that called now basically like a theory about what is the maturity curve, and we can define what would be the maturity curve for the CDP in terms of how you can tackle the climate change questionnaire. From the early stages, you have just to disclose to CDP. So think about not only on how will you be scoring or not, it's basically say what is the actual state of your climate-related topics on this. You can just provide information about how would you in the future perform your climate-related risks and opportunities, how would you address them, what are your plans to measure your emissions, and just in a way that you will indeed show to the CDP what is your process on. For the developing part, now you go to what actually is more related with the impact in your operations in terms of emissions, in terms of the energy, and also it is important now to define how these specific climate-related topics impacts your strategy planning. So it is more related with how you set your targets related with climate, what is the engagement that you have with your supply chain and the entire value chain related with climate's risk and opportunities, and how you even have that relationship with your entire supply chain, how you measure your emissions in the scope 1 and 2, and how you break down those emissions. So it is here important how to jump into a more elaborated answers that you would provide what is your progress throughout the specific climate topics. If you really want to go further and go to a mature level, you will need to then consider additional steps that are like introduced right now, that are basically, you need to improve the target setting, not only in the way that you define them, but in the framework that they are included too. So you need to consider, for instance, frameworks such as the science-based targets, or anything that related that provides how are your scenario analysis and all those specific details in terms of how to define proper targets towards a better environment in terms of a reduction of emissions. You also need to align your risk and opportunities with a framework such as the TCFD that basically provides information about how you can indeed link those risks to actual figures and numbers in terms of revenue or cost that will the company will suffer due to these specific climate-related impacts. And in this case, now you need to incorporate climate change into the core of your strategy business. For the leadership part, then you need to link a bit more what will be like the role of the board on these decisions, in a way that they will also provide some of the best practices around environmental leadership in terms of how you can improve not only yourself as the company, but the market itself. How is your influence throughout your market in a way that you indeed can improve not only your approach as the boundaries of your company, but all of the stakeholders around the strategy and so on.
So maybe now bring a little bit of conversation before moving to the next poll. It is important for you to understand that you may perceive your organization is leading on different fronts, but it might not be the reality. Why is this? Because communication is not enough. You need to have a much more aggressive approach. Disclosure is fine. Engagement is fine. Having buy-in from your management is also fine. But steering, leading, setting an example, sharing knowledge is what is going to make the difference. We have seen very great examples from different organizations around the world where they are on the maturity curve. But for instance, although there is a lot of organizations that publish that they are doing a lot of changes, taking a lot of actions, etc., that can be perceived as a leader, yes, but the impact will be wider, will be bigger, will be stronger if the best practices are shared. It is important that you do not need to keep knowledge to yourself. You need to be a source of replication and setting a good example for your peers. This could be even your competitors. It makes no sense for you to come with a better idea to try to manage your emissions up to a certain point and not be able to share any information whatsoever. Be mindful that there are some other organizations which are located in countries we may have different challenges that you have, but maybe some of our ideas and solutions might be applicable to that front. I'm not sharing that you should sort out the challenges and problems from competitors, but maybe you can share hints or ideas that can serve as an entry point for this specific development of strategies. This is why associations initiatives are created for, and this is how CDP also can serve as a source for using benchmarking information and monitor yourself, how fast are you moving. So remember, you might perceive that your organization is in one position, but might not be the entire reality. You need to interiorize and assess yourself. What am I doing? What am I disclosing? What am I keeping to myself? And why am I doing this? Now, we see here the maturity curve, level 1, which is laggard, level 2, compliance, level 3, smart follower, level 4, integrated, and of course, level 5, purpose-driven. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share the next poll of this specific session, poll 3. And please just let us know, where do you think your organization position itself within the maturity curve? I'll give you 1 minute. %67% of participation. We can do better. So I'll give you, let's say, 20 more seconds for you to participate. Amazing. 71% of participation. I'm going to end the poll right now. I'm gonna very briefly share the results so you can see it. So as you can see, a lot of organizations are in the earlier stages. Some of you are developing, some of you consider yourself mature, and some of you consider yourself as leader. Thank you so much for sharing this information with us. Also, what you will need to be taking into account, the possibility of doing leapfrog, for instance, between laggard and smart follower. Maybe 2 or 3 minor changes are needed. Having the buy-in from your management, maybe start measuring your emissions, not 100% implementing the target, maybe target per sector, per scope, and you can immediately jump from laggard to smart follower. So think about these small changes and how can they improve your scoring process and how much more information you will have at hand to share and disclose with your peers and your investors. Okay. Moving forward on how to improve your CDP score. I would say we can go here jumping 1 to 1. I will be doing 1 recommendation and Luis Felipe will do it the next one. Number 1, you need to understand where you stand. Where are you at this current point in time? What are the resources that you have at hand? What are your ideas? What do you plan to do? What do you intend to do? What are your blockers? What is blocking you? You need to understand where you are so you are able to see which resources do you need to move forward.
Once you understand your location in the curve, then you need to identify the gaps to properly improve your score. How will you do that? Basically, you need to check how is your level of disclosure for those specific chapters to understand if you need to focus a bit or put more efforts and resources on topics such as the emissions. You need probably to break down your emissions in terms of countries, facilities, fuel type. There are many other breakdowns that the CDP asks that you will need to understand which chapter you need to focus, targets, risk and opportunities. Just look at what you actually need to move forward on the crime related topics.
Number 3, take action to close the gap. So now you understand where you are. Now you understand your gaps. So what do you need to do? Do you need to prepare a report? Do you need to prepare a strategy? Do you need to measure your, do you need to study your supply chain? You need to take action to be action effectively.
Control anything that you don't measure. Basically, it is something also that the CDP asks to understand how your progress is towards your climate-related targets. So it is important that you develop also some kind of procedures, internal procedures in which you can develop manuals or anything that it would be give you a better overview about how indeed you can track those specific changes year by year.
Number 5, pinpoint challenges and negative answer. There will always be somebody in your organization that might have a negative attitude towards the progress in the climate strategy. You need to pinpoint what is driving this person or this specific group of person to be against this process. You need to make them understand that sustainable development is not decoupled from financial gain, and it can be done up to a certain point. Some level of investment is required, yes, but you need to identify your blockers and what are the drivers behind these blockers to be able to address them accordingly.
And again, not all the actions that you will take are meant to be like now or in the close term. You need to define what are short strategies that you can tackle like in the further years, but then you can also define what are medium and long-term actions that you will define towards the end of your climate strategy. You need to define those specific gaps and those specific timelines in which you will address all of the measures that you already identified in the previous steps.
Number 7, define conditions of success for yourself. Remember, where you are located matters. Maybe you wish to decarbonize one specific sector of your production system, but what is surrounding you is not letting you move forward. For example, to use only location-based electricity, and you don't have market mechanisms to try to decarbonize, but you can do other things, not, for example, energy efficiency, etc., etc. You need to define your own conditions of success besides the already existing what is considered a best practice scenario. A global best practice scenario, of course, is the thought and a wishful thought, but not all of companies will be able to be successful on this specific front because there are several conditions that might block you to achieve this target. It could be that a natural disaster not directly related to climate could be blocking to, for instance, an earthquake or any other type of calamity, for example, domestic calamity as a coup d'etat or something like that. Things happen. So you need to set your own conditions for success.
And last but not least, it is important to understand, and I guess that you might see through this presentation and this entire webinar, that this is not a one-person role and a one-person job. You will need to address this as a team, as a company. Then you really need to define what are the roles and which people is involved in this process. What is the role of each of them? How they can improve my strategies? How they can indeed tackle the specific gaps that I identify, from the board to operational to many other departments that you really need to engage to properly answer the CDP. And aligned with this, basically, you also need to understand what do you need to properly jump to the CDP and who to involve all this. So for instance, when you go to measure what you need to the past and current GHG emissions or the energy consumption, if the company is related with the top or with the market kind of chemicals, polymer production, or any related with, you will see or you might understand that you need to contact the operational or production team. But maybe there are some companies that are more office-based. So there could be something called like an energy manager or something related with that specific sector that you really need to jump to and have that interaction to properly build the answers for the questionnaire in that specific chapter. You also need to explain the reliability of the data. And this is more linked with monitoring, reporting, and verification procedures. For this specific sector, you need answers. You need to connect with the project managers or anything related with accounting and reporting department. It could be maybe even the CFO of the company who also understands or who also knows about how to properly disclose the information around your different reports or many other accounting frameworks. You also need to understand what is the stakeholder engagement and the external communication strategies towards climate-related topics. In this case, you will see that the procurement officer is the role that is linked with this specific process. But again, it could be also a work for directly for the CFO or maybe even the sales department that develops those strategies, how to link with the climate, and even like maybe there are some details about contracting that are linked with the specific benefits that you indeed like implement to properly connect with your supply chain. The last one is also to understand the governance mechanisms to integrate climate change. And in this case, you will need to develop or to create, for instance, a sustainability committee or a role that usually it's involved in the big companies, that is a chief sustainability officer. Then you will know the role of this person is basically to engage and to link what you already know or what you already identified as climate topics, but link with the business strategy itself.
Moving forward, we have one specific case study for one of our customers that has very kindly allowed us to share the experience of us supporting for the CDP submission. So we have concept 4, which is, they work with cosmetics. They are cosmetic producers. They produce beauty accessories, fashion accessories, co-packaging, and home fragrances. And of course, with them, we work supporting them in the submission of CDP climate change questionnaire. Concept 4 is located in Hong Kong, plus $5 million revenue, founded in 2003, approximately 50 fixed-term employees. So what did we do with them? But first, we assessed scope 1 and 2. Why? Because they wanted to move forward into the sustainability maturity curve. And within this basis, they decided to take one step further, submit to CDP the climate change questionnaires. We mapped all of the questions. We went to do interviews, hunting for data, reviewing documentation, understanding their concepts, their motivations, drivers, and blockers to compile a very, very detailed and robust CDP submission. So what happened after this? Of course, we work with them to develop metrics and internally update internal procedures, because they needed to increase awareness on climate issues to have their overall organization engaged throughout this specific process. It was a very eye-opening experience for us, because we saw how engaged an organization can be even before submitting to CDP. So they were really moving forward, pushing, very ambitious, very aggressive on this front, because they needed to, because it's a main driver for them as an organization. And they were not doing it just because an external force requested this. This was an added value for them. And of course, we provided different tips for next steps. Number 1, to conduct a scope 3 assessment to identify the material categories for them and set science-based targets that will support them to be net zero by 2050, identify their hotspots to be able to address with them, and of course, implement an 80-20 based projects, taking into account, okay, we need to address the 20% of activities that are generating the 80% of our emissions. So it's important to take into account this, what needs to be done, when and how. So for us, the overall strategy with Concept 4 was really, really very productive and fruitful. So more recommendations. Number 1, start gradually. So what do you need to do here? Well, of course, we need to understand that disclosure, it is a journey in itself. No, it moves forward only after you start, but you need to be bold. You need to have more focus on what you are doing, and of course, what you are doing great by the time of your first disclosure. You need to be very detailed. This is what we are doing fantastically. For instance, we are communicating this. We are doing. We have established an energy management system. We are certified ISO 50001. We have engaged with our suppliers. We are committed to set a target within the next 2 or 3 years for renewable energy. This is very important when you disclose, no? So you need to take the simpler approach, and of course, focusing on providing a complete response to a smaller set of questions if this is the first time that you are specifically disclosing for CDP. And of course, you can improve as you move through the year. So remember, if you are starting, if you receive the minimal version of the inventories, complete it as much as possible. It's less challenging and less demanding, but it will be much more rewardful if this is your first time.
Yeah, the second and third recommendation are quite linked, considering that climate disclosure is a cross-cutting issue. It's something that links not only the sustainability department, but all around many departments that could be in your company. And you really need to focus on what does matter. I mean, when you develop a screen about like what are the themes and what your organization needs, even besides climate change, you will need to indeed focus on the starting points and where to actually build that specific point of where to improve or how to start my disclosure if it is your first time in this process. Try also to include, for instance, key or buzzwords to develop that kind of a structure about how you can answer. And the answers they should be also related with the timeline that you have. Like you need to not only like focus on one specific section of the questionnaire by time to time, but you can just develop and progressively like move towards the final answer to properly disclose to the CDP.
Just to add a little bit more context on number 3, focus on what matters the most to you. It is important to screen which theme is relevant, and of course, climate change will always be the tipping point, but there is the possibility that your customers will request you to fill in maybe water or forest, although this might not be relevant for you. So don't waste time and effort answering these themes if they are not 100% relevant for you. You will need to, of course, consider how to address climate change appropriately, because it's the main pillar, and include buzzwords and structure your answers on time. Some of your current strategies might be outdated within 2 or 3 years because methodologies and buzzwords and technology change. So you need to take this into account. You cannot keep on using the same vocabulary throughout the years. You need to monitor what is happening in the market.
It is important to also keep everything like updated. You need to have some control about the information and where you can actually locate it. If you start your progress about your first disclosure to CDP, or you already like disclose in this framework, if you don't organize or you don't have like a proper plan in a way of how I can retrieve this information, this will become a burden year by year, because you will have like a unorganized process. You don't have like a proper step-by-step procedure that you can indeed develop through your company. So the better that you organize and the better structure your process and your documents and your data management is, you will indeed reduce the amount of resources and the amount of energy that you will spend towards this disclosure process.
Number 5, read the questionnaire in advance to prepare your answers. You have the option, of course, of downloading or print out the questionnaire on PDF format to work with it. Filling externally, create like a draft submission for you that you are able to edit, add, enhance, delete on time, and work on time. Do not download the questionnaire 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline, because it will be impossible for you to work in advance. Do it at the beginning of the year, maybe at the end of Q1 at the latest. You will have a lot of information to compile, a lot of documentation, a lot of people to interview. This is very important. Interviews are key, because it's not one person that have all of the answers. So read the questionnaire in advance to be better prepared.
And finally, monitor on a yearly basis, as actually the CDP asks. As this is a process that every year will change slightly due to new regulations coming on board, or even internal processes that change, or new best practices implemented by specific sectors. You really need to understand that this is something that at least you need to perform every year. You need to update your information, and even like this could be a point to discuss through your board in a way that you can also tackle the climate related topics and make them more valuable and more relevant for your strategy.
Great. So these are our recommendations. Let me move to the last poll of the webinar. Which of our specific services might be of interest for you? Please just let us know. We'll be very happy to further assist you. I'll give you 1 minute for you to answer on this specific front. Important to highlight, you see CFA, that's carbon footprint assessment, scope 1 and 2, and CFA 1 to 3 is carbon footprint assessment, scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. For those of you who wish to implement a carbon footprint report at company level.
Everything based in the GHG protocol guidance.
Indeed. So I'll give you 20 more seconds. We will have a Q&A session for the last 5 minutes of this session. So looking forward to work with you. So this is a very engaging group. And we have some already existing customer working with us. We're very happy to see you there. Hopefully we can keep on supporting you on this continuous process. Which important to be reminded is that this is an iterative process. It's not that you report once and then that's it. It also can be improved and enhanced for this specific process. So happy to see a very active participation on this specific front. If you need something else, we will be very happy to support you specifically. 10 more seconds before I close the poll. Okay, thank you everybody for participating in the poll. I will be closing the poll, and of course we'll be moving to the next slide. What are our upcoming webinars? You can scan the QR codes and of course book your spots. We will have 3 more webinars. One is navigating the ESG reporting landscape, alignment and key differences. The second one will be the CSRD preparation series, materiality. This is very important for different organizations as well. And the last one will be understanding the EcoVadis methodology, all of them to take place in February the 16th, 23rd, and 28th. So please be attentive of all of the announcements. You can just scan the code and you will look the content, the information, everything that you need to be on top of these specific pillars and topics. Without further ado, I will open the floor to answer your questions that have been provided through the chat. We are, of course, very thankful to see the questions that you have given to us. And we will be very happy to start answering here. I will give the floor to Luis Felipe first.
Yeah, indeed, there were some specific questions related with, for instance, how the CDP reduced the reporting burden. It is basically linking the way that the framework was to connect with other specific frameworks as the TCFD and also the science-based targets, for instance. These initiatives are mostly like best practice in this climate-related sector or analysis. The idea of CDP becoming that important in this sense is that it does include the information that the TCFD asks, and it's linked also with any other strategy linked with a 1.5-degree warming world, you know? So in that sense, considering that those specific 2 frameworks, the TCFD and the science-based targets, are linked with the information that you were going to disclose in the CDP, they are already linked with. And not only that, all the questions that are uploaded in the system, in the guidance that the CDP provides, they also suggest how you can link specific answers for the GRI, for other frameworks as the SDGs, and how to link those specific answers that you provide there with those questions and other questionnaires and other frameworks. So it is indeed like a way that you can combine everything in just what the CDP asks and how you can provide the information from other frameworks. Other question that we have here for the chat is if the emissions of the last year are profiled. Indeed, there is some information that it already comes from what you already provide, but it is important to consider that you are also allowed to modify those specific changes that you provide for previous emissions. As we mentioned, now you are able to provide at least 5 years, so you have a space to indeed provide previous emissions that you either disclose or you have already in your system. Another question that you have for Kit from the chat is if it's necessary to subscribe to science-based targets initiatives to set the GHG emissions reduction targets. Well, it is not, but indeed is recommended because the questions or the questionnaire itself, the CDP asks for targets that are aligned with a 1.5 degree world. In this sense, they also indeed ask if our targets are linked with the science-based target initiative. If you don't provide that information, it's not that you will have like less scores, you will indeed disclose this process. But if you're willing to have like a score better than a B and an A, which is a management role or even leadership, you really need to jump to what are the best practices now. And one of those is that targets that are linked and are approved by science-based target, the science-based target initiative.
Great, thank you so much, Luis Felipe. And of course, moving forward, maybe question 4, if does CDP provides feedback on the response that would help reporting entities identify opportunities for improvement? It is important to understand the roles. This is not the role of CDP. CDP is a repository entity which collects data to be shared. It is, let me just put it in context. It will be like if we ask the coffee producers if they are able to, I don't know, to put together a coffee machine. It's not their role. They're part of a big chain. So once we understand the roles, we will be clearer about what should we consider conditions of success for that specific role. So it's not CDP role to replicate, disseminate, provide feedback on a specific technical topics. The role is a central repository. CDP is a platform. It's not an initiative. It's not academia. It's not research. So it is a central repository. So once we understand the roles, we will have clear, okay, what I need to do, what is my role on this, should I share, etc. And of course, it helps to monitor and evaluate the different organizations. If nobody scores you, if nobody sets the bar high, then there is absolutely no driver whatsoever for many companies in the world, sadly, as we put it, to do something and not even doing, but share something. Silence can also be a driver for climate change, no? And it's important to understand the specific roles that each organization has on this process.
Okay, there's another question about where the CDP, the 2023 CDP questionnaire opens. Well, on April, if I'm right, the day is the 23rd of April. The CDP already opened the submission for the questionnaire, but it is also relevant if you can jump previously to the guidance and the reporting guide that they indeed provided the website. Also, another date to consider is when the disclosure process ends, and it is in the month of July 2023.
And maybe just very quickly to answer one last question, if value chain engagement is a large section, where do you recommend focusing on? Well, of course, value chain engagement depends. If you have been requested from somebody which is part of your value chain to participate on this specific process, you need to set first the goals. What is the main goal of participating in this process? Why you were requested this? And then you will better understand where to specifically focus. So to take a step back and see the big picture is a good strategy when presenting or submitting to CDP. Thank you very much. It's 5 sharp. With this, we close this specific